Hey, it's Ian. Welcome back to another tutorial. This is the start of another little series of tutorials I'll be making based on how to make flowers and organic growth and stuff like that. This is going to be an ongoing series because there's a ton of stuff to show. This has been one of the most requested things from people. They want me to show how I made, some of the scenes from this flora video I made. I make a lot of like flowers and weird, trippy, organic growth stuff. So, and it was always part of my plan to show all of it. So I'm definitely going to be breaking down all of these shots at some point, showing you exactly how I made it all. But for now, I'm just kind of starting with just one thing at a time. There is a lot to show. And I'll be honest, making flowers can be kind of a bitch. It's a little tricky sometimes for depending on what you're making. And so I'm kind of spending some time trying to search for a method that's like really easy to explain. Because a lot of the stuff I find out there, a lot of the tutorials out there are really complicated and they're not really for beginners. And making flowers is not really a beginner thing by nature, but I'm trying to find a way to make it sort of beginner friendly. That being said, we are going to start in this tutorial with the most simple, easy type of plant. It doesn't involve any simulation or anything like that. It's simply just modeling and animation, and the result is really cool. So what we're going to be making is this plant called a bromeliad that is in my flora video here in this shot. And it's a real plant, based on a real plant, which you can see here, this Pinterest thing. It's called a bromeliad. They're kind of like these weird alien-looking things. They're like these stalks of sort of repetitive leaves that sort of, grow upwards and outwards. I remember walking through a store one time and I saw these and I was like, oh my God, I have to model this and I have to put it in my video because it's such a cool looking plant. So this is what we're going to be making, and then later on I'll make more tutorials down the road that kind of break down different types of flowers and organic growth. Cool. So without further ado, let's jump into Houdini here. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we want to construct we want to construct our single leaf. So put down a geo here, and we'll just call this bromeliad. I think that's with an O. Cool. And we want to put down a curve Bezier and go hit spacebar 3 to go into our front view. And then I like to turn on snapping. So it snaps to the points. And basically, we want to just sort of draw out the profile on one side of our little plant thing here. So maybe like this, something like that is good. Hit enter. And if you hit F on the keyboard, you can switch to this mode here where you can grab these things and then grab them and then come over here and click this little button, the one with the little dot, and then it gives you these little handles where you can sort of define how curvy you want it to be. And then you can come back in here and middle mouse click on these to kind of move them around and get a nice smooth curve. So I'm going to get something like this, I believe, be good. We can adjust this later as we see fit. We may need to kind of mess with it a bit to get it to work right. But for now, that's looking decent. Okay. And then let's mirror it. So we have two sides. And then we need to resample. And we'll do a resampling of let's turn on the little dots so you can see. Let's do 0.017, give ourselves some decent resolution here. Make it subdivision curves. And then we want to fuse this, because right now you can see it says 2 polygons. We want to make sure that this is all one piece. So fuse, now we have 2 polygons still, and we need to do another step where we put down a poly path and put that in there, and that it changes it to 1 polygon. So now it's all just like one closed loop. Great. Weird, why is it not saving? Strange. Okay. And then the next thing we want to do is put down a planar patch from curves. which basically just fills this in with polygons and gives ourselves a little plane to work with. And let's do resample curves and bring this down to like 0.028. Give ourselves some nice resolution there. So now we have this basically flat plane that is going to be our leaf. God, stop giving me this warning. I don't know what that is. Okay, then we want to put down a UV project, and let's just hit initialize to best plane. And that's kind of stretched looking, so let's kind of adjust this till these look like squares. Yeah, good enough. Okay, give ourselves some UVs. Okay, and then we want to create a start group. So group, and we'll call this start, because I'm too lazy to type start. Hey, start. There we go. And we want this to be a point group, and we want this to be just this very bottom guy right there. Okay, and then we want to sort this, and we want to sort the points by Y. So if you click this little number icon thing, let me turn off that so you can see. What this is doing is it sorts the point numbers by the Y height, meaning it starts 0 is going to start at the 0, and then the highest point number is going to be at the top. Without that, it's just like a bunch of random stuff. It's like 1, whatever. So if you sort them, then they're like in order based on how tall they are. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to create a group range, and we're going to create an end group. So the group name is end, and it's going to be a point group. And we want to go like this and then hit invert range. So we're only selecting the top one. So if we didn't have this sort, turn this off, you're not going to get that top one. So we want the sort so that the last number in the sequence is the top. So this just kind of keeps it procedural. So that way, if down the road we come back up here and we change something with our curve and mess it around, the point numbers will always be going from 0 to 1 in the Y height, so that we can just keep these groups the same and not have to mess with it. Okay, the next thing I want to do is we're going to set up a few little masks here that we're going to use. God, go away, stupid warning. We're going to set up a few little masks that we will use later on for shading. So let's put a distance along geometry. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to use the start points, our start, and make sure we're putting out a mask. And then let's invert this so it's like that. So basically now we have a mask that goes from 0 to 1, and we can use this to shade this later on so that like the tip can be a different color than the base or something like that. And we'll call this, we don't need to call it anything. Okay, and then let's create another group, and we'll call this mid. And what we want to do is make it a point group and keep in bounding regions. Let's do a bounding sphere and make this much smaller, like this. Oh, let me turn off the snapping. Okay. Okay, and then just kind of place it in the middle right there. Okay, and then we want to create a side group, another group here, and it's going to be point group, and we're going to go include by edges, and we're going to go unshared edges, and that will give us the perimeter here. And we'll call this side. Okay, and then what I want to do is create another group here, and we're going to name this side also. And what we want to do is points, keep in bounding regions, and then we want to do, instead of replace existing, we want to do subtract from existing. So that way let's change the center to be, the size, and the X to be 0.5. Oops, this may be 0.5, like that. So let's go to our front view. Great, so basically I just want these points here and not the other side. Okay, cool. So this will all make sense in a minute. I'm just kind of setting some stuff up. So now we're going to do a distance along geometry again. And we're going to call this side mask. And I want to have my start points be my side. And I want to output a mask, and we're going to call it side mask. Okay, and then with this, we can kind of adjust it, maybe something like 0.5. Let's just do 0.5 right there. Well, we can adjust this later if we need to. Okay, and then we're going to create another one called center mask. Okay, and what we want to do is, instead of using the start points, we want to use the middle. Get rid of side. Okay, and then this is we're gonna name this center, not center mask, center mask. And does this say mask? It does. Let me get rid of that. Side mask, center mask. Great. And for center mask, we can just leave this like that. But we can use this to shade it later on, so that we can have like the center be a different color than the outsides. So for now, we'll just leave it like this. Okay. And yeah, okay. Now let's put down a normal. And let's do maybe a smooth. See if that does anything. Nope. Okay. We don't need that. Cool. And then let's poly extrude this a little bit. Give it some thickness. We'll go 0.008. And then make sure you put output back. So I have just a tiny bit of thickness on here. Maybe I even do a little less. Just something like that. Or no, let's actually 0.008 seems fine to me. Okay. And then let's do a poly bevel. And I want to ignore flat edges. So I'm just beveling the sides here. And let's make sure, let's just do like a tiny little bit of this. It's basically, I'm trying to get rid of this like flat edge here. So let's do like 0.0039, something like that. And then give it like 6 divisions. So now we have this sort of rounded, nice little rounded edge here. So it doesn't feel quite so just like a extrusion. Okay, and then next we're gonna do a soft transform. And so right now this is all like uniform thickness. I want the tip to be skinnier than the base. So what I'll do is just kind of grab a few of these, hit enter, and then we can adjust the radius of how much this is going to affect. But for now, let's just adjust the Z-scale to be like 0.26. So there, you can see that the tip is really thin, the bottom is really thick, and if we use this soft radius, we can kind of define how far down that effect goes. So I'll go something like that, maybe just 1. So it's like a really gradually thinning effect. Okay, and then let's put another normal, because I think we've changed our geometry. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to bend this. So we want to put down a bend, and I want to hit G on the keyboard so that I can adjust this little guy here. Let's roll it, this way, because I want it to bend like this, and then let's turn it 90 degrees like that, and then also let's move this in. So this should be bending one side of it like that. But what I want to do is do deform in both directions, and then something you can do, you can use a mask attribute. So if I hit mask on, I can type in height mask, and then what that does is, well, it should. Do I have height mask? No, I just need mask. It was my first one I set up. There. So what that's doing now is if we view our mask that we set up, the very first one, it's affecting these areas. It's bending more in the areas where the mask is greater than it is in the areas where the mask is not existing. So if I turn mask off, the whole thing bends uniformly. But this gives you sort of a more organic look when you turn it on, because it's like only part of it is bending like that. So let's have the bend angle be like 36, something like that, or let's do negative 136, something like that. I don't know, maybe less. Something we can adjust later on. Okay, cool. And then we can, of course, come back up to our first distance along geometry. Let's just call this mask so we can remember which one it is. And if we play around with this mask will then adjust the bend. You can kind of see where you have some control over like how much of it is bending, which I really like. It's so cool that you can do that. So something like that. And I can even increase this value beyond 1 so that it like really like overextends it if I wanted to, which I'm not going to do for right now. Okay, and we'll call this one bend sides. Cool. Okay, and then we're going to put down a second bend. Whoop, get that out of here. Let's just plug it in here. Okay, and this is going to be the one that that bends our thing backwards. So let's just turn this 90 degrees like this. We want it to bend something like that. So I don't want this to bend the whole thing. I don't want the bottom part to bend, because if you look at the photo, it's like it kind of stays straight right here and then it bends. So you kind of have this like part that isn't bending. So I want to move this up a bit so that it starts a little higher, something like that, and then have it bend to like negative 155 or something like, let's go 155. So let's set some keyframes here. Let's come out to frame 71 or 72 and put a keyframe there. And then let's come back to frame 1 and set it to 0. Oop. Delete channel. Okay. And then, so if we animate this, you can see it's going. It's very uniform. So what I want to do is come into the animation editor, and then let's just drag this guy back and drag this one forward so that it kind of has some, it's like starts slow and then goes fast and ends slow. Maybe even more. Let's exaggerate that curve just a bit. So there. Okay, and we can adjust this later, so we'll call this bend back. Okay, and then I like to make this, let's make it green. I like to change the color of the ones where I set keyframes to green so that I know that there are keyframes on them. Okay, then let's put down another transform here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this to scale up and down our thing. So let's set it to like 0 in the uniform scale here, and then come out to frame like 34 maybe, I don't know, and set it to 1. Okay, and then let's come into our editor here, and I want this to like explode upward. So like this, kind of have it go something like that. And we may need to adjust these later. So I want it to shoot up first and then bend backwards so that it kind of comes out and then around. Okay, and then we will, the other thing I want to do is, right now, this is exactly in the center. And I'm going to be using a cloner to sort of clone like a big stock of these. And if I do that, they're all going to remain in the center and they're going to intersect. So, but I want to have this sort of like tube-like shape. So in order to do that, I'm going to have to kind of move it outwards a little bit. So what I want to do is let's go frame, so frame 0, let's put on the Z, yeah, that's what we want. We want to keyframe 0 on the Z, and then right here on frame 34 again, let's bring it out to like, I'm not sure, let's see what I used before. So let's come out to like frame 72, and then put this at like minus 0.036, something like that. And then we'll come in here, and again, we want to have this sort of pop up like that. So let's try that. Something like that, okay? Again, may need to adjust it. Okay, cool, and then let's just make this green again. Great. And then we will put down a null, make it black, I think, oops, what did I just do? There. Call this out bromeliad petal. Okay, cool, so we've got that. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to put this into a mops instancer. So like I think I mentioned this earlier, we're going to be using mops for this. You can do this without mops, but it's much more difficult to like retime stuff. It's a lot more complicated. Mops and Mops Plus make it so much easier to offset the timing of animated things. So, which is what we're going to be doing. So let's, I guess let's come out to the fully formed thing, and let's plug this right into a mops instancer. And then we want to set the distribution to linear, and we want the distribution, let's give ourselves 60 points, and we want the direction not to be in the Z, we want it to be 1 in the Y, and let's make it like 3.94 tall. And then these are all facing the wrong direction, I think. Let's see if I animate. Yeah, so I want to come into the instancing, go to the global transform, and let's see which, yeah, so I need to change this to 90. Great, now they're all facing in the right direction. But they are not swiveling around the way that I want them to. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a mops fall off from attribute. So what this does is, by default, the attribute is ID. So when you use a mops instancer, it automatically assigns an ID number to each one of these things. So if I preview the fall off, you can see that the one at the bottom has an ID of 0, I'm guessing, and the one at the top has an ID of 1. So it automatically creates a fall off based on the ID, which is super helpful. And of course, you can set this to whatever attribute you want, or you could remap it so that, you know, the fall off is higher or lower or whatever, but we're not going to do that. This is exactly what we need. Okay. And the reason we're going to do that is because we're going to use a mops transform modifier, and we're going to call this phyllotaxis, which is like the science name for the orientation of how petals are oriented in flowers. It's sort of this mathematical thing. And this isn't going to be like super mathematically correct. I mean, some people like to use like tons of code to create these like, you know, super accurate phyllotaxis setups, but I don't like doing that. I like to just kind of do my own thing here with these little buttons and sliders instead of using code, and it seems to work pretty well. So I'll show you how I did it. So basically, what I want to do is you need to have, the magic number to remember is 137.5. So you need to take the number of however many copies you have and divide it by 137.5 or multiply it. So let's keep this procedural. Let's go to distribution, and the number of points we have, let's copy that parameter. And then we're going to come in here, and under the rotate, because the rotate here, we want these to sort of spin around this way, like this. So I could just do, you know, 360 or something. So that looks kind of cool. You could do something like that, but then they're all intersecting. I don't want them to intersect. So what I want to do is do 137.5, but then I want to multiply it by the number of copies I have. So we will paste relative references. There you go. Pretty cool, right? So it's looking pretty good. You can see I'm getting some intersections here. So I may need to kind of mess with it a bit. And if I turn off fall off, it doesn't work. So you have to have this fall off by attribute for this to work. So let's maybe translate it by 0.007. Let's see if that does anything. Is this doing anything? No. I don't want these to be translated at all, I guess. So I think maybe what I need to do is come back into my mops instancer, and let's change the length a bit. No. Let's see. So this is kind of where it gets a little tricky. You kind of have to eyeball it a bit to make sure that your plant is working. So let's maybe in the transform, let's try moving it like that. That looks a little better. Okay, now we're not seeing those intersections, but I think I want these to be down a little more. Let's go like 4, like that. So I probably need to bend these things a little more. So let's hit the bend sides and let's bend them in a bit. So we kind of just have to eyeball it to get the shape right. Maybe come back over here. It might need to be something. Okay, see how it's kind of like fat at the bottom there? Maybe it needs to be a little skinnier and then get fatter towards the top. So that could be adjusted with our mask here maybe. Let's try doing something here. The bend. Let's try doing it like this. That seems to work a little better. So we reverse that so that and then maybe we can even put another one here so that it bends more at the top. So we have this sort of bends inwards towards the bottom. Let's bring the value in so it wraps even more like that. And then maybe we have, yeah, that's looking cool. Maybe this can be brought back down. Cool. So now they're not intersecting, and we've got these nice pieces here. So you just kind of have to play around with it, eyeball it a little bit to get it to work right. Okay, cool. So now if I hit play, they're all blooming at the same time, which cool, but I want them to bloom one at a time in a sequence to make it look like it's growing. So what I'm going to do is I want to put down an attribute delete. God dang it, get out of here. Put it at the end where I want it. Okay, and the attribute I want to delete is mops fall off. Okay, and let's turn off the visualize here. Why is that black? Let's put it normal. Does that help? Yeah. Okay. And then I want to put down a mops shape fall off here. So mops shape fall off. This is what we're going to be using to animate the effect on and off. So we want to rotate it -90 so that, and then let's make the scale here. Let's do like 0.236 and -180. Something, no. Okay, and then let's animate this from, one sec here. So I actually do want to rotate this 180 degrees because I want, I think, right? No, I don't. So let's animate this so that, basically I want it so that when the mops fall off is 0, these are not triggered. And then when the mops fall off becomes 1, each one of these gets triggered and the animation plays. So let's bring this down to like below here. for 0 and set the first keyframe. And then at 72, let's bring it to like, I don't know, 0.18 or 0.2, something like that. Okay, and then let's just come in here. Let's make this linear. I'm going to have this go really slowly, and then we can retime it later. And then we can come over here and right-click on this and go to, which one is it? I think maybe if I hit Control E, yeah, just click on this. I don't remember where to find it, but if you click on it and hit Control E, it opens up this little deal where you can adjust what happens before and after your keyframe. And after, I want to change it to slope and hit Apply and Accept. That way, it'll just continue on this same trajectory. And so if I move this, you can see that little dotted line changes. Okay, cool. So now, even though I have a keyframe set at stopping at 72, it's going to continue on afterwards for forever. Okay, cool. And we may need to change this a little bit later, but for now, we're just setting this up. So the next thing we're going to need, this is where you're going to need Mops Plus. So far, right now, all of this Mops stuff I've been using has been the free stuff. But now we're getting into Mops Plus, which is the paid version, which I highly, highly, highly recommend that you get. It's so worth it. And I use it all the time. I'm going to be using it in all my tutorials. So it's, it might be a little difficult to follow along with some of my stuff if you don't have it, because it's one of the only plugins I use. You don't really need many plugins, but Mops is awesome. So we're going to use a Mops set sequence time. Okay. We need, before that, we need a Mops trigger fall off. And for this, what you need to do is you need to set the attributes here. We need to change this to keep attributes because we're going to need this elapsed attribute. And then the threshold is what we want to change. So basically, I want the threshold to be like 0.99. So, and the operation is greater than. So what this means is that if the Mops fall off that we set up here is greater than 0.99, so basically 1, then trigger the animation. And the elapsed time range, remember we set I think everything we've built so far is from 0 to 72. The animation completely stops at 72. So let's change this to 72. Okay, and then I think that's it. And then we'll go to Mops set sequence time, add that in. And this is where you need to go index type. Instead of expression, you go attribute. And the attribute you want is, there it is, elapsed. Okay, and then again, we need to override the frame range here, make it 72. And that should be it. So the only crappy thing about this is that you can't really see it in the viewport well. It doesn't really do anything unless you unpack it. So you have to unpack your instances here, and then you'll see what it's doing. And it doesn't seem to be doing shit right now. So I'm going to need to figure out what is going on there. Strange. Yes, I remember. Okay, so the reason it's not doing anything is because your incoming geometry cannot have keyframes on it. It needs to be an animated alembic file. So what we need to do is bake this out as an alembic and then bring it back in. So let's take this guy, our original little leaf thing here. Where is it? Okay. And we will put down a ROP alembic output. And we'll just call this leaf, I guess. Okay, and then we want this to be my $job, or save it wherever you want it to. And then I want to put it in the alembic folder. And I want to name this $OS, which will name it whatever I've written here, which is a handy little thing. Okay, and then I want to, I think that's pretty much it. We want to render frame range, change it to 72 or whatever you set your last keyframe at, so it gets the whole thing. And then let's just hit save to disk. Okay, great. saved. And let's bring in a alembic file. Alembic. Okay, and then we'll go to job alembic leaf. Okay, so we've got our alembic here, baked out, great. And then we should just be able to replace this here and have it work. But for some reason, it is broken up. So I think what I need to do is in my mops instance or here, under instance objects, we need to change the cycle method to clamp and clamp it to 72 frames so that it doesn't just continue cycling. So that way, there, it's doing exactly what I want. And then if we go back down the chain, it should work. They're all working at the same time, cool. And then let's go unpack and see what this does. Get out of here. Still not working. Very strange. Okay, I figured it out. It's because if you look at my mops shape fall off here, I have inverted this to be 180, and I don't need to do that. I want it so that it's just the top parts should be 0 and the bottom parts should be 1. That should do it. Because what was happening when it's 180, they're all 1, meaning they're all triggering at the same time, and I don't want that. I want it to be triggered when it turns white. Okay, so if I come back down here, yeah, there we go. So now you shouldn't see anything because none of them have triggered. And if I hit play, it should start triggering them one at a time. Yep, it's working. So it's going kind of slow, and I can see intersections happening right there, which may be okay. But let's see, let's make this a little faster. Let's try, let's go to our shape fall off, and let's come back in here, and let's just like move this up and see what that does. See if that helps. It's even more intersections, so I want to probably bring this back down, something like that. So it's kind of a guess and check a little bit to where you have to try to figure out what speed these need to play at so that you don't see the intersections. I think I wanted it actually. I think really slow is probably the best because then we can just speed it up later. So you're balancing your keyframes against your animation here. So let's, maybe, Okay, so I've kind of got it figured out here. It just takes some finessing to mess around with how fast your trigger fall off is going. I slowed it down a little bit. I also added in on my philotaxis, I went to this 137.5 times my copies, and I added a plus 895. So that just kind of rotates it even more a little bit to kind of vary it up and get rid of some of those intersections. And you can see there's still a little bit of intersections, but the way that I filmed it, I put I had a camera basically profile to it. So you don't really see those intersections. And so depending on where you are putting your camera, you may not need to finesse it too much, but basically adjusting how much it's spinning in the philotaxis helps a little bit. I've also added in an additional bend. So I've got this bend sides, the original one here, which is bending, just based on the mask. And then I've got this other bend sides, which is not, I've turned off the mask so that it's bending it completely uniformly. And I'm having it start from minus 155 and then open up to here. And I think I want to bring this, yeah, so I'll open up to here. Let's bring this back a bit. But yeah, so that way it's starting kind of skinny. So you have this sort of like little needle that shoots up, and then it gradually opens as it gets plays through the animation. So you just kind of have to play around with it a little bit and kind of eyeball it. There's probably a way more procedural, mathematical way to do it to make it perfect, but that's not me. I don't know that stuff. I just kind of like eyeball things around sometimes until it looks right. So yeah. And of course, once you've made changes up here, you just every time you make a change, you'll need to just hit save to disk on the alembic so that it resaves the changes you've made to this new alembic, which shouldn't take too long to do. Okay, so you've got this thing here, and then let's find a nice starting point. How about like right here, and we'll time shift it. God, why do I keep doing that? Time shift this. So we're gonna add 209 frames. So we'll go $F plus 209. So that way it starts here when we're at 0, and then we can just have it play through. And then we will retime it here. So let's go retime. And we'll have it play through. You can change the speed to be whatever you want. Maybe I'll do 3, just see what that looks like. So let's see at full speed. Oops. Oh, in the input frame range, let's do 600 so that it actually plays the whole thing. Cool. So you can time this so that, because I've set I have them trigger really slow, so that just to kind of get rid of the intersections. But I didn't want it to play that slow when I actually did it. Okay. So let's for now let's put down a file cache, and let's just cache this simulation here, because this is I guess technically a simulation with the trigger fall off. So in order to have it play through at real time, sometimes it's easier to just cache this. Should just take a second. And then basically what we're going to do is we're going to use a path deform to sort of have this sweep this geometry along sort of a curvy path to make it feel a little bit more organic. So just give this a second. And good. Okay, so I should be able to scrub through here pretty easily. Yep. And let's play, see what that looks like. Great. So, I could always go back in and finesse this a little more to my liking, but for now, this is fine for the purposes of the tutorial, just kind of showing you the mechanics of how it works. So let's put down a labs spiral. Yeah, there we go. Lab spiral. And let's template this guy and then make this one the one we see. And we will change the height so that it matches. Let's go all the way up so that the height of this is roughly the same. And we can have the radius like this, maybe like that. Let's have, how many loops do we want? Let's just kind of go like that. Okay, cool. And then we'll use a path deform. And the geometry that I want to deform is this guy, and the path I want to deform it along is that. And the capture and align, I think the forward direction should be Y. Yes, cool. So now we've got this growing thing that we can use. We can kind of move it around, and I could even put like some sort of noisy point jitter on the spiral to kind of make it undulate so that it moves around. But that's basically all I did for this. And then I just kind of took this and transformed it. So let me just merge these both so I have both of them, and I can take one, kind of move it, spin it, put it kind of in the background, something, I don't know, like there, and just kind of set up a camera to focus on one of them, and then I just kind of have these other ones in the background. And you can use a time shift node to kind of offset the time a little bit so that they're not happening at exactly the same time. So that's basically it for the effect, there isn't really any simulation. It's mostly just kind of modeling and timing up your keyframes to get this to look right. And then I'll show you in the next part here how to light and texture this. It's pretty simple. We're just bringing in the masks that we set up and kind of making some fun textures. So yeah, that's it for this part, and I'll be back in the second part shortly with some lights and textures and stuff. Thanks.